Hey, how are you? Welcome to One Piece of a Dream. My name is Richard, this is my wife Claire.
Hello.
And today we're going to be discussing a theory about Dr. Vegapunk with you that's going to leave you completely and utterly mind blown. But before we do that, we need to get into the dirty little secret that Dr. Vegapunk has been hiding from you. You see, Dr. Vegapunk isn't really the man you think he is. He's been lying to us. Oda has been pulling the wool over our eyes. It's been a fugazi, a fugazi, a fuwazi. You see, Dr. Vegapunk is a completely different person on the inside. We're going to be discussing what's in Dr. Vegapunk's brain. But don't get caught staring at that big sexy apple on his head for too long, because his eyes are here. You see, Dr. Vegapunk is actually based on a completely different scientist. He may look like that picture of Albert Einstein with his tongue sticking out, but in reality, Oda just saw that and thought, man, that'll look real good with an apple on its head. I should probably throw that in my manga. But no, really, he's based on an entirely different person. You see, he holds the epithet the world's smartest man. And someone once asked Albert Einstein, how does it feel to be the smartest man alive? Do you know what Albert Einstein responded with? He said, gee, I don't know. You'll have to go ask Nikola Tesla that, because that's who Vegapunk is really based on. You see, he shares the exact same dreams and hopes and inventions, all of that good stuff, as Nikola Tesla. He even has a satellite named Edison, and Thomas Edison was Nikola Tesla's main competitor, but we're going to get into that a little bit later, because what's more important is that they shared the same dreams. First off, in chapter 1068, Dr. Vegapunk said that he wanted to bring unlimited energy to the entire world, and that it was everywhere. You could reach out and touch it. It's all over the place. And Jinbei responded saying that that would end wars over resources. It would be so great and amazing, and indeed it would be. And Nikola Tesla had the exact same dream, but there's a difference, at least as far as we know so far in the manga, because Vegapunk says he hasn't figured it out yet. That may or may not be true. We don't know. But I think he has, but if he hasn't yet, he will later on. You see, Nikola Tesla did actually figure it out, or at least he came very close. How? Well, you see, in the year 1900, Nikola Tesla pitched an idea to JP Morgan. That idea was, if you give me funding, I'll make a giant tower called the Wardenclyffe Tower, and I'll send out radio waves with this tower, which you can use to help further your companies. And JP Morgan, being one of the biggest investors in America and part of a family that was essentially American royalty, decided, yeah, that sounds amazing. So, what does Nikola Tesla do? He starts building this tower. And once he gets the tower almost to its completion, he runs out of money and messages JP Morgan and says, hey, I have an even better idea. How about, instead of using this tower to send radio frequencies, I have a way that we can use this tower to power the entire world for free. I found a way to make clean and unlimited energy, and I can use this tower both to create it and transmit it. And what did JP Morgan have to say about this? Well, he wasn't happy. He immediately pulls his funding, calls Nikola Tesla a kook, and then goes on his way to tell the entire scientific world that nobody should be funding this man. This man is, yes, he made Nikola Tesla out to be a crazy person. Now, I know what you're probably thinking. Why on earth wouldn't JP Morgan want to give free power to the entire world? It would help the entire planet. It's the right thing to do. It would help impoverished nations. It would put an end to wars all over the world, just like Jinbei said in chapter 1068. So why on earth wouldn't he want to do this? It's the right thing to do for humanity as a human being. Well, the reason for that is because JP Morgan cared more about his financial status than humanity. He owned General Electric and AT&T, copper-making factories that made thousands of miles of copper wire for electrical wiring. He owned rubber-making factories that made insulation for that copper wiring. He made steel-making factories that made power plant generators for power plants. He owned coal mines that mined the coal that power the power plants. He owned lumber factories that made telegraph and electricity poles. He owned railroads that helped transport all of these resources all across the United States. And this would bankrupt JP Morgan overnight. It was the worst possible thing that could happen to him. And in JP Morgan's mind, he had to put a stop to it immediately. He could not let this see the light of day. Now, this would not only bankrupt JP Morgan overnight, but it would also bankrupt all of America's financial elite class. And he was not going to let that happen, which is why he instead chose to fund Tesla's competitor, Thomas Edison. Thomas Edison used to be a co-worker of Nikola Tesla. And since then, Thomas Edison spent most of his time taking Nikola Tesla's inventions and trying to improve upon them so he could sell them to the rest of the world and make tons of money. And he was getting rich off of it.
Does that count as theft?
It counts as inspiration. But JP Morgan was continuing to fund Thomas Edison in the hopes that he would put Nikola Tesla under. And he successfully did do that. In fact, the bank would eventually foreclose on the Wardenclyffe Tower project, and Nikola Tesla would die in a hotel room alone with tons of debt, with 80 chests full of his life's work, and the government of the United States standing right by in the hotel room next door to raid his hotel room the second he died and collect those 80 chests, which only 60 of them were recovered. So, you tell me if Tesla was a kook. The US government clearly didn't think so. And it's a very similar thing to how Vegapunk is currently about to be attacked by the world government, and they're going to step in and take all of the technology that Vegapunk made and his blueprints for inventions for themselves. But that's not where it ends, because Vegapunk is just beginning to show his similarities. You know how he mentioned that this power source was actually from the Void Century? Well, guess what? Nikola Tesla's form of unlimited energy is also from ancient history. Because you see, Nikola Tesla didn't even invent this form of unlimited power. It was actually invented over 5,000 years ago. You see, according to mainstream Egyptology, the Great Pyramid of Giza was built as a tomb for Khufu 4,500 years ago. And that's it. There's nothing special about it. But that's not true. It's completely different than any ancient Egyptian tomb we've ever found before it. It contains no hieroglyphs, no wall art. It contains no items for the pharaoh to take with him to the afterlife. And most importantly, it doesn't contain a body. There has never been a mummy found in the Great Pyramid of Giza. In fact, it's been argued that the mummy might have been there at some point, or at least by science that it used to be, but there's no evidence to support this theory. The sarcophagus in the Great Pyramid of Giza has been empty since we found it. In fact, no mummy has ever been found inside of any pyramid. We've found tombs near pyramids, but we've never actually found a mummy in a pyramid. It's just theorized that these were tombs for the pharaohs, but in reality, we don't have any proof. So, what was the Great Pyramid of Giza actually used for? Well, to figure that out, we need to look at the construction of the Great Pyramid of Giza. Before we delve into this, I just want to let you know this theory was actually crafted back in the 1970s, so this was definitely around for Ichiro Oda to have used as reference material before writing One Piece. The Great Pyramid itself is a very strange structure, a lot of tight corridors and small passageways, very bland and empty walls with no writing or hieroglyphs to be found. Not the ideal place that you would think that a people like the ancient Egyptians would want to store their god amongst men. You see, the way the pyramid was built suggests that it had a different purpose. The sides of the pyramid are aligned with such accuracy that only modern engineering can match it. It's a structure of stones that weigh over 6 million tons, piled 481 feet high. They cover a span of 13 acres. This structure is massive, and these blocks weigh 2 to 40 tons apiece, and most of them didn't even come from the local area. A lot of these blocks were brought in over 500 miles away. The pyramid is aligned to within 1/15th of a degree of true north. The bottom of the pyramid is level up to 3/4 of an inch. The only way that we can actually manage to make something like this today with our modern technology is using lasers. The sides of the pyramid are 755 feet each and within 2 inches of each other, a 99.98% accuracy rate.
How is that possible?
Well, it's possible because it's not. It's not humanly possible, but somehow it exists. And each side of the pyramid isn't actually a straight shot like you think it is. It's actually slightly concave, which can only be seen from space, looking down on it, or during an equinox, because the shadows of the pyramid were perfectly lined up with the equinoxes.
What?
Yeah, the Egyptians had some obsession with equinoxes. And you see, whoever built the pyramid somehow knew the size of the Earth. If you take the height of the pyramid and multiply it by 43,200, you get 3,938.685 miles. This is within 11 miles of the polar radius of the Earth. If you take the base of the pyramid and multiply that by 43,200, you come out with 24,734.94 miles. The Earth's circumference. And this isn't just a random number to multiply to get the number we're looking for either. 43,200 is actually more relative than you think. Do you remember when I said that the ancient Egyptians had an obsession with equinoxes? Well, there happens to be 43,200 seconds exactly within one equinox. But now that you have an understanding of just how precisely put together and assembled this pyramid was, we can get into the most important part of everything, and that is the materials they used to build it. You see, most of the Great Pyramid is assembled out of nummulite limestone, which can be found locally to where they built the Great Pyramid of Giza. However, a large portion of the pyramid was built out of more unusual materials that are not local to the area. The exterior of the pyramid was once covered in casing stones made of bright white limestone, and they were fit together so tightly that no seams were visible. This stone was cut and shipped from a quarry in Torah, almost 500 miles away. And you have to remember that these blocks weighed an average of 10 tons each. 500 miles is ridiculously far to carry these rocks. They were special. And why do they matter? Well, these blocks have a high content of magnesium, unlike the blocks found locally where Giza was built. And they are a great electrical insulator. Why is this significant? Well, the local limestone can actually carry an electrical current. Tura limestone can't. So it was necessary to bring these rocks down so they can act as an insulator on the outside of the pyramid. Because on the inside of the pyramid, they used regular limestone that can carry a current. And they also used a large amount of rose granite, which has an 85% quartz content. And if you know anything about quartz, it can actually create a positive and negative charge of its own and complete a circuit simply by shaking or compressing it.
Like
which
a battery?
means, yes, just like a battery. In fact, it's used in many things that we use today. It's used in watches like Rolexes, where you can just shake them and they'll start working again if they happen to run out of juice. It's used in televisions, in remote controls. It's even used in barbecue grill lighters. Yeah, that's right, the spark you're making is actually a result of quartz crystals. The king and queen's chambers were assembled with quartz-rich granite. So were the passageways. If pressure was applied to all of this granite, it would create a massive amount of electrical current. And there is actually a lot of evidence to show that the pyramid actually was used to generate electricity, like a lot of it. Yeah, it may not be scientifically accepted by the mainstream, but in 2018, they did prove this was a possibility. And I'm going to lay my whole case out for you, and you can decide for yourself what you think. My goal here isn't to get you to believe in the power plant pyramid theory. My goal here is to let you understand how Eiichiro Oda could have definitely used this when he was writing One Piece, and it's all going to make sense by the end of this video, I promise you. But first, you need to understand how the pyramid works to understand how it incorporates itself into the series. You see, at the base of the pyramid is an aquifer, and the moon uses its gravity to move the water around in the aquifer, creating sound frequencies. The sound frequency it creates is naturally resonating at F sharp, or 440 hertz. There's copper and iron rods that were recently discovered from the base of the pyramid going down into this aquifer. The same type of setup that Nikola Tesla used for his Wardenclyffe Tower. Copper and iron rods that dip down into an aquifer, which would then send sound frequency up the tower and get transmitted into electrical current and put into the atmosphere for anybody to use. The pyramid essentially does the same thing, but slightly differently. You see, the pyramid is tuned essentially to F sharp, and I'll explain what I mean by that in a second. But first, I need to go over the fact that there have been chemical reactions actually shown inside of the pyramid. It all starts at the base and works its way up to the queen's shaft. And once you get into the queen's shaft up to the queen's chamber, there's actually two shafts that lead to it. And in the northern shaft, there's been traces of hydrochloric acid. In the southern shaft, there's traces of zinc chloride. When you put these two chemicals together, you get not just a reaction, but you get a very volatile reaction that creates a lot of hydrogen. This hydrogen would then move its way up to the Grand Gallery. And in the Grand Gallery were about 27 Helmholtz resonators. These resonators were also tuned to F sharp. The gallery was actually walled with quartz-rich granite. And when the hydrogen gas would make its way up to the gallery, it would push against the walls of the Grand Gallery and generate electricity. This electricity would then charge the hydrogen, and the electrically charged ionized hydrogen would then start ringing in sympathy with the Helmholtz resonators. These Helmholtz resonators would then proceed to make the hydrogen push against the walls even harder and create even more electricity, creating hydrogen microwaves. These hydrogen microwaves would then work their way up to the king's chamber. Once these hydrogen microwaves went through the perfectly chiseled hole to get through to the king's chamber that would fit these microwaves exactly, they actually end up resonating again in an F sharp chord. You see, above the king's chamber is something called the relieving chamber. It was called this because it was believed that it relieved the weight of the pyramid, but that's not actually what it does. You see, in the relieving chamber, there are 5 sets of granite stone blocks with air gaps between them. They are smooth cut on 3 sides, and the top is rough cut. It's believed that they were set up like this because the ancient Egyptians were able to chisel away at these granite blocks until they got them to ring out in the frequency that they wanted them to. In essence, it rings an F sharp, and it's another giant Helmholtz resonator, which causes the king's chamber to again ring out an F sharp and make even more electricity. Slap a golden cap on top of the pyramid, and that electricity that will go from the bottom of the pyramid up will be dispersed out of the top, just like Enel's power back in Skypiea, which will be relevant, and I mean very relevant, here in a second. However, this electricity would then be thrown into the atmosphere and supply free, unlimited, clean energy to the entire world. Now, before we go deeper into that, we need to go into not only Vegapunk and his dream for unlimited energy, but we need to take a trip back in time. Back in time to Skypiea. You see, in Skypiea, Enel was actually using a technique to send his electrical current all over the island, which he called mantra, which he explained was basically supersonic waves like radar that he could use to send his electrical current further than he normally would be able to and sense everything on the island. This is very similar to how Nikola Tesla was planning to spread his electricity to the entire world. You see, he was planning to use radio waves in a way to do this. Now, why is any of that relevant? Well, it's relevant because if we go back to Shandora, we actually have a giant golden pyramid. Who built that giant gold pyramid? Well, you would say the Shandorans, right? Well, isn't it interesting that Enel, initially after leaving, would go on his airship to fly to the moon for that cover story where he would go through the sequence of events with the moon people. Not only is it a giant gold pyramid which was heavily stressed Enel could spread his electricity through gold, because electricity does go through gold very well, it's a very good electrical conductor, but there's also a bell in front of the pyramid. Now, what if that bell happens to ring out in the proper chord necessary to transmit electricity up through that pyramid without having to do anything else? By using the sound waves, you could send that electricity through the pyramid and power the world for free back when it used to be a part of the world below, before being sent up to Skypiea and becoming the upper yard. See, Shandora used to be connected to Jaya, and it's a major possibility that this pyramid maybe existed during the Void Century. Now, I believe that it's a possibility that this Great Pyramid of Shandora was powered by water originally. However, I think that that bell that was put in was actually put there to power the pyramid artificially because the water was removed. Because there used to be an aquifer, but now there isn't. Just like how there's an aquifer underneath the real Great Pyramid of Giza, the Gold Pyramid of Shandora likely used one as well. Now, where would this water have came from? Well, that can be answered if we look to the Void Century. Now, back during the Void Century, it's likely that this pyramid was indeed built by the Automatons and Lunarians. However, the island of Jaya is still missing a portion. At least it's theorized it is by many people anyway. Because if you look at the completed map of Jaya as a skull, the right eye is still missing. And what could have went in that right eye? Well, maybe it's a possibility that the right eye is actually the water source that could have been used to power the Shandora pyramid, just like the real Great Pyramid of Giza uses an aquifer. What if I said that there's a good possibility that this river may actually have been a part of Alabasta, and Alabasta may have been a part of Jaya at one point?
Think Alabasta, though?
Well, I think Alabasta because there's literally a river that if you were to place Alabasta in the hole the perfect way it would fit, this river, Sandora, would run directly to Shandora. It would literally be a perfect fit, and it would literally go straight to the pyramid. Not to mention, it's a desert island, like similar to Egypt. Like, that's clearly an idea of what it was based on. And there's a pyramid there. It just makes sense. And to top it all off, something I've been holding out on you guys with, Nikola Tesla actually got his unlimited energy idea by studying the Great Pyramid. He studied all of this stuff when he was alive. His lifetime was spent working up to his unlimited energy that he never managed to create on a global scale, but he did manage to figure it out by studying ancient technology, just like Vegapunk. tell me that is not where Oda got the inspiration for this part of the story from. Now, I know some of you are really skeptical when it comes to theories, and I have something else for you in case you still are not convinced that Vegapunk is actually Nikola Tesla. You see, Vegapunk was interested in the 21 grams experiment. Why is this relevant to Tesla? Well, you see, Tesla had an interest in the human soul as well, because Tesla believed that the human soul was made up of electrical current, because the human body actually does use electrical current to process between its nervous system and the brain. You see, when you hurt yourself, say you stick your hand on the stove, neurons are fired off and little electrical synapses are sent from your hand to your brain so your brain can feel that pain and let you know to take your stupid fucking hand off the stove, you idiot. Now, how is this even relevant to Vegapunk? The tyrant Bartholomew Kuma, that's why, because Bartholomew Kuma can quite literally take his electrical synapses in his nervous system and transmit them outside of his body, turning them tangible. Things like his memories can be made physical. You can touch them. And that is important because it represents the fact that the human soul is quite likely to be a real tangible thing made of electrical current. Vegapunk and Nikola Tesla seem to both agree on this. So why is this also relevant to Tesla? It's relevant because Nikola Tesla had a very strong interest in the afterlife, so much so he made something called the ghost radio. You see, Nikola Tesla was a very strong believer in the theory of Einstein, where he believed that energy cannot be created or destroyed. It can only be changed or moved from one form to another. You cannot create it, you cannot destroy it, it will be here and it will always be here. That is the idea. So this is relevant in the case of the human soul, since humans contain electricity. And if humans contain electricity, that bit of electricity, which essentially could be weighted out to be our soul, just like Vegapunk said, actually could still be here after we die, with or without a power like Kuma's. You theoretically could use the soul's power and speak with it if it's still floating around in this lifetime. You see, if it can't be destroyed, it can't leave. It's stuck here.
Scientifically proven ghosts are real.
Well, it's an idea. It's not proven, but the electricity thing is proven, but there's no proof that the electricity in the human body, it sticks around. But I'm not gonna get into that yeah or nay on whether I believe that, because I mean, what I believe doesn't matter. That's not what's important. What matters is what Nikola Tesla and Vegapunk believed. Nikola Tesla and Vegapunk both shared the belief that the human soul is tangible. That's what matters. You see, Nikola Tesla made this ghost radio on accident. You see, Nikola Tesla was in his lab one night working on a crystal radio. And this crystal radio doesn't have an internal power source. It's only powered if something around it produces electricity and powers it. It has to be able to have an external electrical force activate it. This radio started to activate with no electricity present. Nikola Tesla was just sitting in his lab by himself when all of a sudden this radio started to talk. The radio started to say words in a weird language that he couldn't understand.
That's creepy.
Yeah, it sounded like people were speaking to each other. And Nikola Tesla was scared, like actually about to crap his pants. Yeah, I would have been scared too. Random voices on a radio you know shouldn't be working right now because there's no power.
That's scary.
It still plays into Nikola Tesla's belief of the human soul. And it's even funnier when you know that Thomas Edison also ended up developing an interest in creating his version of the ghost radio called the ghost phone, only Nikola Tesla made his work where Edison didn't. Edison actually embarrassed himself in a live meeting in front of a bunch of people. You see, he had a bunch of psychics and everything. He was doing a presentation, and he wanted these psychics and mediums to summon some ghosts, because he made his ghost phone, and supposedly it was able to sense any disturbance at all. Like even the mildest disturbance, the meter on the ghost phone should have went off. You see, they claim that there were ghosts present, but Thomas Edison couldn't make his ghost phone work. And it wasn't that he assumed that the ghosts weren't present, he just assumed that he had failed and that he needed to fix it. Now, however, Thomas Edison did claim that he could have made the ghost phone work if he had enough time. However, he died too soon after starting to create it to actually complete it, and his estate, for whatever reason, wiped all records of the ghost phone away.
Why is that?
They might have just thought it was like a smudge on his scientific genius that he was...
Smudge?
Yeah, that he was interested in the paranormal. Maybe, back when he was alive, it was different because... yeah, it was kind of mainstream to be into seances and things like that. However, after his death, maybe it just died off. I'm not really sure. I didn't look into the reasoning as to that. I just know that they did. But Thomas Edison didn't even have an interest in this until he found out that Tesla had an interest in this. You see,
So
Thomas...
it was phony.
Yeah, kinda, yeah, that's a good pun. Yeah, he was phony. But the reason he grew an interest in this was because Nikola Tesla let the whole world know about his ghost radio. He was grabbing patents and headlines, and Thomas Edison, being the competitor that he is, decided to go ahead and create his own version of this because he couldn't be one-up by Tesla. He had to have a better product. He needed to be number one in the world of electrical science. Finally, we have one last comparison to make between Nikola Tesla and Dr. Vegapunk, and that is that they both created weapons for their respective governments. Dr. Vegapunk creates weapons for the One Piece world government, as where Nikola Tesla tried to create and sell a weapon to the United States government. He actually was going to sell this weapon to every government, because this weapon was supposed to be so powerful that it could possibly destroy the entire planet if he so wanted to. You see, what they tried to do was prevent this possibility of Nikola Tesla creating this, because the United States government saw this as a threat. So they did everything they could to stop Nikola Tesla from getting patents and funding to create it. But what they didn't know is Nikola Tesla had already built this weapon. And the idea behind this weapon was supposed to be strictly defensive, where you could take down like 250 airplanes out of the sky at a time if you so wanted to, or destroy the entire world. It didn't really matter. This weapon was supposed to be capable of doing any level of destruction necessary. And the idea was if we gave one of these to each country on the planet, it would essentially stop all the world's wars by giving them a weapon so strong that they would have to be stupid to attack each other. We've seen how that goes over with the nuclear weapons we have, so obviously it would not have worked. However, Nikola Tesla didn't know that at the time, and I guess he didn't have a grasp on this. It was the pain theory, basically, that if every country has a tailed beast, that means that every country will stop fighting. It doesn't work. It just doesn't. Now, the reason that this wasn't a great idea is because Nikola Tesla had already built the weapon and actually tried to test it, having disastrous results. At least it's theorized. You see, on the same night in 1908 where Nikola Tesla was testing this weapon, only moments after he tried to fire it off, a big explosion occurred in Tunguska, Russia. You see, initially, Nikola Tesla was trying to attempt to test this weapon by firing over Alaska and creating a light show. He wasn't intending to actually destroy anything, but the weapon worked too well and overcharged and ended up overshooting its target. But even having realized that he had overshot, he had no idea the amount of devastation that his new weapon would cause. He may have completely leveled a forest in Tunguska, Russia, only moments after firing off this weapon. You see, only a few seconds later, this massive 12 megaton explosion would occur in Tunguska, Russia, and it would level a huge portion of the forest there. And still to this day, nothing has grown back in that spot where this explosion occurred. And Nikola Tesla could have been responsible because his lab is directly in a straight line on the globe away from where this explosion took place, and it would have been an overshoot of where he actually had intended to fire his Teleforce weapon. So it's a possibility that maybe he did end up leveling this forest. However, the overall attributed theory is that the area was destroyed by an asteroid having an asteroid airburst. However, this is not proven, and it's literally just science trying to explain something that they have no proof for. They actually haven't found anything to guarantee that this is really what occurred, so honestly, all we have is theories. It's even theorized that aliens could have caused this. I even did a video on that on my old channel because I was actually interested in this theory a while back, and it's just cool that it's now relevant to the Vegapunk Nikola Tesla theory when we have to compare their weaponry. Now, comparing Nikola Tesla's Teleforce to Vegapunk's weapons, it seems very hard to do. However, there's two different aspects of Teleforce that seem to have been taken by Oda when he created the weapons that Vegapunk uses. One, they both use photon light rays. You see, they both have a form of this weaponry that they use. The pacifistas use Kizaru's lasers, just like how Teleforce would use a laser beam to destroy whatever target it was using, just charged by electricity instead. Similar to how Enel would fire his electrical beams to destroy whatever target he wanted. But there's more to it than that, because there's also the defensive aspect of it, where Vegapunk created a bubble reflective shield with the new pacifistas to reflect anything, and the idea behind Teleforce was to be a defensive weapon. They both believe in weapons of peace, because they both wanted to stop war across the globe. And Vegapunk received an Nobel Prize, Nikola Tesla ended up receiving nothing. However, it's kind of interesting because that Nobel Prize is basically useless now when the government wants to see you dead, so he may as well have also received nothing. So I think we may see that Vegapunk will likely end up losing his life while he's out with Luffy, and I do believe he'll escape, but I'm pretty sure that Dr. Vegapunk is going to end up finding this Void Century energy, and it's going to be a huge portion of the story later on when Luffy ends up finding the One Piece. I think there's something that Vegapunk is going to have to do with this electricity source that they're going to find and recreate, and it's going to give not only the power to defeat the world government to Luffy when it comes time to finally do so, but it's also going to give the world back its futuristic properties that it once had during the Void Century, where everybody had unlimited power and the science and technology was just as advanced, if not more advanced, than Vegapunk's current lab on Egghead Island is. We'll just have to wait until we get to that portion of the story to see, but I think that that pyramid in Shandora is going to play a huge portion of what this story will turn out to be. And I do believe that we will see that Skypiea and Shandora, all of that will play a part when it comes to the One Piece. Now, that's all I have for you guys. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, please consider watching another video on screen right here. Like, share, subscribe, comment, all of that. It really helps the channel. And until next time, that's all we have for you guys. Peace.
Bye.